Welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard podcast. My name is Rob Murgatroyd, and each week on this podcast, I talk to some of the most fascinating people on the planet in all areas of life, from mindset to fitness to spirituality and, of course, business. Look, I believe you deserve success in all the areas of your life, not only business. But before we get into today's show, you may want to join us on our next Work Hard, Play Hard experience. This year, we're going to be going to Mykonos and Marrakesh. In these experiences, I have hand-selected a group of high-performing business people who are seeking more balance, connection, and they want to celebrate their wins as a reward for the hard work that they put in. If you want someone to curate once-in-a-lifetime experiences and force you to play more, rush over to workhardplayhardexperience.com. Fill out an application so we can jump on a discovery call to see if this is a good fit for you. And remember, excuses are over. It's time to live.
The first thing I ask people to do is look around your life and figure out if you have any villains in your space, because if you do, it's time to fire them. And oftentimes people find out that they're their number one villain. Never in those prior 14 years did I have people just show up trying to help me. That hadn't happened. And suddenly I saw it happen time and time again. And it was overwhelming, the support that I got. If you're the person that's vying for the attention, begging for it, and trying to say why you're so great, it's because in your heart of hearts, you don't feel that way. You know, one of the beautiful things about truly discovering confidence is realizing you don't need anyone else to recognize it once you recognize it within yourself.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard show. Today on the show is Heather Monahan. Heather was running an advertising department for one of the largest radio networks in the country. And one day she found herself out of a job. And so she decided to do something different. She tweeted about it. What came next after that tweet is no less than remarkable. So if you are someone who has thought about writing a book or becoming a sought-after speaker and have no clue how to do it, this episode is packed with super actionable things for you to do very specifically. If you're someone that needs to reinvent yourself, this episode is going to help you in that area too. Okay. Before we get into today's episode, if you find or have found yourself in a situation where you have to reset your business or reset your life because of all the things that are going on in the world right now with COVID, or you just need a good pivot and want some coaching and accountability, I want to help you. I'm going to do some free 30-minute coaching discovery calls to see how I can help you. All you have to do is go to workhardplayhardcoaching.com, fill out an application, and we'll jump on a call. Okay, please enjoy this episode with Heather Monahan. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I think a great jumping off point would be to talk about growing up, I think I'm going to say this right, in Worcester. Did I say that right?
Ooh, you nailed it. That's really impressive.
Here's what I want to talk to you about first. In what ways did growing up being raised by a single mom, raising 4 kids, not having a lot of money, on food stamps, in what ways do you think that affected you, maybe positively and or negatively?
Oh, gosh. Profoundly. That's sort of when we look back at our childhoods, whatever they may be, you just described mine. Everyone's got their own, those are really the foundations, building blocks from which we view ourselves and view the world. So for me, I really viewed the world as not a really bright place, a really hard, challenging world, and that one that you have to scrap and work your butt off for and really, just work to make money. So for me, I just always saw that was the world the way that it was. And at 9 years old, I started, I had my own paper route, and then I started bussing tables, and then I started waiting tables, and then bartending. And, it was just this evolution of one job to the next, never stop, never take time off. And it really built a foundation and a lens through which I saw the world.
Yeah, for sure. And are both your parents still alive?
No.
They're not. Okay. It's interesting how much our childhood affects, and I think particularly, sort of in that Northeast, I don't know, maybe scrappier part of, like New England. I grew up in New York, and it's different. Like I live here in LA now, and it's kind of a different vibe, like,
sure.
Like my dad went to the bar after work, and he's got an Irish background, so,
yeah.
It's just kind of like a different sort of vibe. All right. So I want to fast forward a bit to you getting fired from your corporate gig. Mm-hmm. Can you take us through the story from maybe, say, the moment that the boss's daughter called you in all the way to sitting at home with your weighted binky, trying to figure out what to do next while you're drinking your glass of Chardonnay?
Yeah, just to give a little color background for your listeners, for 20 plus years, I was in corporate America. I reached the C-suite. I was a chief revenue officer. In my tenure at the company, I had more than doubled the company's revenue. When I entered the company, it was billing $100 million annually. When I exited, it was in excess of $200 million. I certainly had done a fantastic job, won countless awards, and I was just named one of the most influential women in radio when the CEO I had reported to for 14 years became ill. He elevated his daughter, and she fired me immediately. And so my path and career trajectory up until that point had been very clearly lit. I knew that, corporate America was where that was my lane. That's what I was great in sales and sales leadership. And ultimately I wanted, I aspired to be a CEO of a company. And that had always just been the path I was on since I, started in sales. So for me, getting fired was never in the cards. I had never been fired from anything. I'm a, class A overachiever. I outwork everyone. I don't disappoint. So it was really shocking. And in order to land a position in the C-suite, you have to sign away a lot of your rights. And one of the things I signed away was an ability to stay in the media industry, which I had been in for 20 years. That's where my expertise and my network really were. And when I took that position as chief revenue officer, I signed an agreement that said, if I'm fired and or if I quit, I cannot remain in that or compete in that industry for 12 months after the day I leave the industry. So when I went home, I thought long and hard about, okay, I cannot stay in the industry where I'm viewed as an expert, where I have a lot of weight. If I'm going to start over somewhere, meaning I'm going to, I can't be in the digital business. I can't be in the audio business. I can't be in the television business. I can't be in any type of media. Okay, what am I going to go into the airline business now? Where am I going to begin? And I just started looking at all the different industries out there. And then I thought, if I'm going to take a chance and roll the dice on something and start over as a rookie, why don't I just take a chance on me? And I kind of just put a toe in the water and I posted on social media, hey, I've just been fired and I don't know what I'm going to do. And if I've ever impacted you in any way over the past couple of decades in corporate America, I'd love to hear from you. And that post went viral and ultimately led me to getting on the Elvis Duran show. And when I was halfway through the interview with Elvis, he said, well, obviously you're writing a book, Heather. And I laughed and said, well, obviously, but I really wasn't. And, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I took his confidence in me and that conviction that he had in me and belief he had in me. And I parlayed that into an opportunity on the flight home to Google, how do you write a book? Because I didn't have any idea. And essentially it says you need to be disciplined and sit for X amount of hours a day and write. And so I knew I could do that. I knew if it came to hard work and discipline, that's my wheelhouse. And I sat for the next few weeks and just wrote and wrote and wrote, and then just took the next logical step and found an editor and then sent him everything. And then, I just moved very quickly the same way I had operated in corporate America, because speed to market is critical in any business. And back then I was still wondering, it's a little over 2 years ago, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this full time, but I'm just going to give it my all right now and go for it. In the end, I had a book, Confidence Creator. I launched the book on Amazon. It trumped for #1 business biography list. And that led me to speaking, which is the best way to sell books, which launched my speaking career. So it's really been, essentially me just traveling into uncertainty, not knowing, trying to reinvent and create different revenue streams, different businesses around working for myself, which I had no prior experience in.
Did you have a previous relationship with Elvis Duran that sort of allowed you to take his confidence in you in a different way, or was it just somebody that you just met for the first time?
No, when I posted that I had just been fired, Froggy from the Elvis Duran Show tweeted at me, "Hey, I'd love to help you." And I tweeted back, "Great, get me on the show." And he did. And so I didn't know any of them.
That's interesting. So, but you were in sort of the radio world. It's interesting that a DJ would tweet back at you and be willing to offer that for you. It's almost like there was some, I don't know, like some universal act at play there. You know what I mean?
Well, I truly believe that the most impactful, important thing that happened through all of this was that I fired the #1 villain in my life. I had been working side by side with a woman who hated me for 14 years. And she'd been my peer for 14 years. She became my boss for a quick minute before she fired me. But she was always trying to sabotage me, always putting me down. I was in a very toxic environment for a really long time. And that day she thought she fired me, I had actually fired the most negative person in my life. And when you do that, you create space and opportunity for positive, more like-minded people to show up for you. And I truly believe that that's what happened, because never in those prior 14 years did I have people just show up trying to help me. That hadn't happened. And suddenly I saw it happen time and time again. And it was like a domino effect. It was overwhelming, the support that I got.
So you sort of created the vacuum in the space to be able to allow that to happen, which you didn't do prior to ending the corporate gig.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I definitely preach to anyone who's struggling with, hardships and career and looking for ways to build confidence within themselves. The first thing I ask people to do is look around your life and figure out if you have any villains in your space, because if you do, it's time to fire them. And oftentimes people find out that they're their #1 villain.
That's interesting. I want to touch on a couple of things. The first one is I want to talk about writing a book, because you're not, quote unquote, an author, or you weren't prior to this. And a lot of people talk about writing a book, but when they think about writing a book, they get all freaked out and I don't know how to do it and where do I begin? But you literally you went on Google and said, how do I write a book? And it was like you sit down and write a book, basically. So what was it, sort of looking back now, or maybe, what advice you would give people who are, in this time right now where they maybe have some more time, where they're home, and now's a perfect opportunity to sit down. Are there any tips that you think would be helpful for them in order to write a book?
Yeah, right now is the perfect time. Do not overthink things. There's one time in my life, I remember when I was pregnant, 12 years ago, and I was put on bed rest the last 4 weeks of my pregnancy. And I literally had to lay around. And I thought, you know what, this would be a great time to learn a new language, to learn Spanish, which would be really helpful for me. And instead of doing that, I worked and I dug into spreadsheets and did more research in my industry and just worked. And that's one thing I look back on my life and I said, you know what? I had this great opportunity, I had this window of time to do something, and I didn't just create value for myself. And I always look back and think, if I could do it differently and go back to that day, I would have learned Spanish, or at least, build a foundation for it. And in 8 hours a day, I could have sat for 4 weeks and created some value for myself, and I didn't do it. So the advice that I give to other people is, you have that window of time right now, right? Like we all have 4 or 8 weeks or whatever it's going to be, that we can't be jumping on a plane and going to a meeting and, be out doing these things that we need to do. And that's out of our control. So instead, why not invest in yourself today? Don't overthink it. Take action. There are millions of great ideas out there. The difference is some people execute on them and take action and go for it. And some people sit with these ideas and pontificate about what could be.
And so you sat there and you started writing. Was it like a couple of hours a day? Were you doing it in the morning? Were you doing it in between, taking care of your child? Like what did the process look like?
Oh my gosh, you're like overthinking it. And this is what people do. So it was just, I committed to 6 hours a day and that was it. So it's on me. Whenever I want to get it done, do it. Right. So it's not like people always say, did you do it on the computer? Did you do it with a pencil? Did you do it in a journal? It doesn't matter. Maybe some days I did it on a piece of scrap paper. It doesn't matter. It just matters that you do. It's the whole magic of it is in the action, not in the thinking or in the philosophy. I just did. So every day it was 6 hours a day. And it's like if you want to go lose weight and you decide that you're going to work out 1 hour a day, it's just like budgeting and figuring out when you can make that happen. Some days I did it first thing in the morning. Some days I did it last thing in the day and stayed up really late. It didn't matter. It was just essential that I get the work done.
Got it. But the work was defined as 6 hours a day.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. I want to talk about speaking. You then went from creating a book into the world of speaking. How difficult was it for you to land that part of your life?
So I didn't know that speaking was a business. Again, I had been in corporate America for 2+ decades, and that's the business and world that I knew. We didn't pay speakers in the media business, so it was not a business to me. However, once I had the book, the product was done, and it was in the process of being published, I Googled, how do you sell books? And it said speak. So I know how to do that. I've spoken for 2 decades at my old job. That was, I would travel around the country and speak at conferences and speak to sales teams and speak for customers. So I knew I could do that. I just made a list of every company, every CEO or CRO that I had great relationships with. And I just started hitting the phones and I would call and say, hey, it's Heather. How are you? How are things going? Listen, wanted to come in and add some value to you and your team. I'm out right now on the speaker circuit and I'm talking about innovation in the workplace, collaboration, all centered around this idea of building confidence within ourselves and our cultures so that we can grow revenues and exceed this year. Everybody would say yes, right? So they knew me too. So there was a relationship there. And so I just built out this speaker. I was speaking probably 3 or 4 times a week just to get the books selling and moving. And then one day I called a company and they said, sure, what's your fee? And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, what's your speaker fee? We have a budget. And so I Googled speaker fees, and then that unlocked this whole new world, billion-dollar industry, or multi-billion-dollar industry, which I wasn't privy to prior to this. And I started researching top speakers, top paid speakers, speaker ranges. And I started finding out, Gary Vaynerchuk gets $200,000 a speech. And I was blown away because I was really focused on this idea of I need a product to sell, and that product was going to be the book. Well, now by taking action and taking chances, I had accessed a new revenue stream that I didn't even know existed. And it's so important for people to know that it's about taking the action and taking the chance, and you'll start unraveling the opportunities because of the steps that you take. So I start learning more and more about that business. And then I learn, okay, I'm fishing in the wrong pool. I'm fishing in this pool that I know, the media world, and 90% of those companies don't pay. So a couple people were paying me here and there, but not a lot. So I started Googling, who knows the right pool of people? There's a pool of companies out there that pay. Someone has got to be have this list. I want that list. And so essentially, through a lot of work on Google and just researching the industry, I discovered there's agents and there's bureaus. And then there's marquee bureaus that are really the blue chips, the ones that, Bill Clinton speaks for or Obama, really highly regarded, successful people. So I set my sights on Harry Walker Speaker Agency because that really seemed, in my experience from researching, to be the premier bureau. And so I found out who the president of the company was. And I crafted an email, and I had taken a screenshot of my book, Trumping Trump, for #1 on business biography. And, because of my background in sales and business, I knew I needed to come up with a unique value proposition. So I researched his speaker roster, which was massive and really impressive. And I found a white space that I felt like I filled. And I just wrote this email about why I believed he needed to add me to his roster, how I could fill a gap that he currently had, and how I could potentially create new revenue for him, as well as elevate the female offerings that he had on his site, because he did not have an equal amount of strong female speakers as he did male. And I was bringing a little bit of a diverse perspective. Nobody else on there had Trump with their book. Nobody else on there had been previously a chief revenue officer. I went through all the things that were unique about me. And so he responded immediately and said, wow, great points. Yeah, you do bring something unique. We're going to go ahead and add you to the roster. So then what I did was I Googled all of their competitors, right? And there's maybe 10 or 12 really big bureaus that compete against them. So I made a target list of all 10. I figured out who the president and CEO was of each of those operations. And then I leveraged him adding me to his roster as the introductory email I would send to every one of the other competitors. Hey, wanted to reach out and let you know I just joined Harry Walker. They thought it was a great idea for me to reach out and just introduce myself. Don't know if you have that same white space that they have. And I'd go right back into my pitch. And so I was added to, I think, 8 out of the 10 that I reached out to by leveraging the first one. So it was sort of that domino effect of, continuing to elevate myself in this new business, continuing to increase contacts and network, and then about building relationship and rapport in this new business so that people would trust in me and believe in me and give me a shot and start pitching me for these paid speaking engagements.
Brilliant. So how do you price yourself when you're dealing with something like that, when it's brand new?
Yeah, I didn't know. So I called a lot of people. I researched a lot online. And what I found out was that really a baseline in that bureau world is no one's on a site like that that's charging less than $10,000. That was sort of the entry point.
Yep.
So I decided, okay, I'll just go in at entry level because the marketplace will determine my worth. And, if I close a few at this price point, then I know that I can start to adjust up, but I didn't want to outprice myself. I didn't have any, prior knowledge. As I developed rapport with the agents and with the different bureaus, they were able to help guide me. But I just thought I'm going to start at the baseline, that intro point, because you didn't want to undervalue yourself because then no one's going to take you seriously. And I saw people doing that. There were people on different sites that would set the, $2,000 for this or $1,500 for this. And it just, to me, it looked like it was cheapening who they were or what their offerings were. And part of this process is you need to have testimonials, just like you would with, how I had with my old business, that people had great experiences working with me and that I delivered results. This was no different. So all the speeches that I had been giving, I had been accumulating along the way, testimonials of my work. And when I would compare my testimonials to other speakers, they were very similar. And some of these people were charging $50,000, $75,000. So I felt really comfortable going in at the 10 mark. People gladly paid that fee. I would go to these events, there'd be multiple speakers, and then I get testimonials after saying I was the best speaker there. And that's when I started elevating my price. And I would just go, by increments of 5 until you started testing the market. And what's been interesting is now, this week, I have people, it's like an entire market reset because every speaking engagement has been canceled across the country. I have people reaching out to me suggesting that I work for them for $5,000 in May when, before coronavirus hit, I was getting $20,000 without anyone blinking an eye. So it's sort of interesting to watch the marketplace reset and respond to different situations that, go on with the economy.
How challenging is it to go on a speaking tour versus kind of the work that you were doing 2 years ago? In other words, are you in, is it a completely different life for you where you're on the road all the time? Or, talk to me a little bit about that.
No, it's very similar. So I traveled every single week. I was in charge of, a few hundred radio operations across the country. So I would travel to all the different marketplaces as well as travel to our marquee advertisers to further the relationships and continue to upsell the clients. So I was always on the road and I was managing operations across the country. So that was challenging in a trying to be everywhere type of a situation, which is really no different than speaking, right? Because you don't get to say, all right, I'm just going to do New York and Boston this month and it'll be easy on, sometimes you're taking a red eye back from LA to make a speaking engagement in Boston because they're paying you the price that, where you set your bar, and it's a great opportunity. So you're sort of at the hands of wanting to make it in a new industry. You need to show up for these things and they don't always work for your schedule the way that you would like them to. But I believe that's part of, being new and being a year in any business. I remember when I first got into sales, it was the same way. I wasn't picking up the biggest advertisers in the marketplace because they were all taken by the more senior level executives, right? So you have to build your business whatever way you can. And I've learned that typically means you're traveling all over the place on the hours that work for the clients that you're showing up for.
Yep, got it. You are extraordinarily confident. In fact, you wrote the book on confidence. So what is the difference between cockiness and confidence?
I think it's a huge difference. I've been seen as cocky earlier in my career. And the reality is someone who's behaving in a cocky or arrogant fashion is very insecure. If you're the person that has to be the loudest in the room, and I've been there, if you're the person that's vying for the attention, begging for it, and trying to say why you're so great, it's because in your heart of hearts, you don't feel that way. One of the beautiful things about truly discovering confidence is realizing you don't need anyone else to recognize it once you recognize it within yourself.
Yeah, I got it. You've got a really strong business game, and you're not afraid to ask for the things that you want. Where do you think that came from? Was it from your parents, or was it from your environment, or is it just in your DNA? Where did that come from?
No, it's from trial and error and experience. So everything I think is a numbers game. You just get better and better at something the more you do it. I started in sales at 9 years old when I was selling papers. And then it went to bussing tables and then waiting tables and then bartending and then a salesperson for Gallo Winery. Then I was selling air in the radio business. Then I was leading team selling air. Then I was a chief revenue officer. All of these are just taking sales to the next level and the next level. And selling really, selling air is very challenging. It's not a tangible product that you can showcase in front of someone like a book is. So I learned different ways to excel in sales. And that is not something that I believe you're born with. It's something that you learn through trial and error.
Why do you think people have so much trouble stepping into that muscle?
I mean, maybe they don't need to. I'm not sure why people would have a hard time. I mean, as a sales leader, I would see that typically the new salespeople that we would hire each year, we'd bring in a group of new people, probably 25 to 35% of them would make it. And typically what I would find is people didn't want to put the hard work in because in those first year to 2 years, it's really tough. Breaking into any new industry can be challenging because all the good clients are taken. There's these people that are just experts getting paid so much more, making so much more money above you, and can become frustrating. But if you don't put that work in, and I always say to everyone, if success was easy, everybody would have it, right? If you didn't have to, if you could just jump over those first 2 years, yeah, it'd be easy. It would be great. But you wouldn't be able to get to that third year if you don't put the time in those first 2 years. And I see now for myself, in the speaking business, is the same way. I know that certain friends of mine that are, 5 years ahead of me, they're not taking red eyes to do the speaking engagement and that one the way that I am. Well, they don't need to because they did that 5 years ago. I'm doing it now and putting the time and the effort in now because I'm the one that's in the rookie position and it'll pay off tenfold. Got it. Because you've seen it pay off tenfold throughout your career. Right. I've seen this movie so many times and it is no different. There's something beautiful as we get older where we can just sort of like look back on the years and go, okay, look, yes, I'm a rookie now, but that's not going to be that way for long. I can suck it up for 3, 4, 5 years and it'll pay off for me. Yeah, it really, that is the beautiful thing about age is that experience and insight that you gain versus the lack of patience when you're younger. Yeah, for sure. What is Boss in Heels and where'd you come up with that idea? So having grown up poor and when I was young, the only boss I ever knew, didn't matter what job I was in, it was always a white man in his 60s, navy blue pantsuit. The quote unquote boss always looked the same to me. There was never this idea that women would be the boss, right? And so for me, when I finally did make it to chief revenue officer and realized, there's nothing different than me or these other people. I might look different, but I can be respected. I can deliver results. And in fact, I can deliver more results than these other people. I wanted to open other people's eyes to that, you can be a boss in heels, you can be a boss in flip-flops or a boss in sneakers. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be the boss in a navy blue pantsuit with the gray hair. And I didn't have that visual as a young adult. I didn't even know to aspire that as a young adult. And it was really important to me to share my story so that people didn't think, hey, this woman just turned up, looking like this and so successful and, delivering these results. No, that was built over 25 years of failure, success, back and forth and figuring it out. And I just wanted people to know that anyone can aspire to become the CEO or any position. It's not about how you look, it's about how you deliver.
Got it. It's a great visual too. I like it. You recently sat down with a man who orchestrated 3 presidential victories. What was the most important thing that you took away from that conversation?
Oh, Philip, he's such a great guy. I actually just hired him to do a data dive into my audience so that I could gain some insights. One of the things that he opened my eyes to is that presidential elections are so orchestrated. As just a naive voter, I didn't think that way prior to really understanding what it is that he does. But the amount of insight, they can foresee. He has been predicting every single primary along the way correctly weeks before it happens. And he can do that by analyzing the data and then seeing how the candidates are marketing themselves through advertising. It's really shocking. I totally recommend everyone to check that episode out because it's essentially this negative advertising works. And I know that everyone hates the negative ads. I do too. But, Philip's built an entire business off of that. And he was giving the analogy that when someone wanted to compete against Nike, someone had a clothing line and they were getting crushed by Nike. They decided to say, just don't do it. Don't buy clothing from a shoe company. And when they did, they implemented that ad campaign, which isn't malicious, right? It just has a little bit of a different spin on it. Their product line exploded. And so what he's done is he's taken these insights that he learned in the political world, and now he's applying it to big brands and different businesses. And like I said, I just hired him to do an analysis on my audience and help me figure out what is resonating more with them, how to do a better job serving my audience through his data analysis.
It's interesting. I like how your brain thinks. You really, really think very, very differently than most people. And I think that that's probably served you really well in your life. I want to ask you a different sort of question. You are currently living now in Miami, in South Beach. Is that right?
Yes.
I really believe that where you live is important and it really informs kind of like who you are. So what would you say is the best part and worst part about living where you live?
The best part is I love being outdoors in the sun. I love the beach. I love the palm trees. Like you mentioned before, growing up in Worcester, it was so incredibly different. It was sort of gloomy and a lot of 3-deckers and not a lot, never the ocean. We couldn't see the water. So I am really grateful for the environment I live in today because of where I grew up. I love that. One of the things I don't love about this city, it's incredibly transient. So it's that part's different than where I grew up. No one ever left where I lived. So you always knew everyone and you knew their parents and their grandparents. And, there was this real deep rooted sense of community. And that I have not found in Miami.
Yeah. Mark Wahlberg is probably the only one that ever left. Yeah, I get it. For sure. So I want to talk about work-life balance. The show is called Work Hard, Play Hard, and we kind of cover both ends of the spectrum. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your satisfaction with the work part of your life, and how would you rate the play part of your life?
It changes at different times, right? So like right now, my son's home and we're in this coronavirus window, and it's kind of cool because we're getting to eat 3 meals a day together and review every single one of his classes together and spend every, day together. And that's kind of wild. It's been really refreshing because we haven't been able to do that. He's always been at school and I'm at work. And so this is really, I really appreciate this time. And it's been really fun, isolated. So I'm just talking about his and my relationship. It's been really cool. I would say that since I've gotten fired, there's been tremendous pressure on me as a single mom to deliver revenues and drive revenues rapidly. So that part, I've definitely foregone a lot of the quote unquote fun, right? Like my friends were all flying to Vegas for 5 days and I'll take a pass. Right now is not the time for me to be doing that because I'm building a business. Again, I'm a rookie in this business and I'm not going to fail. And I know I need to put the time in. So Is that ideal? No, absolutely not. But I also know like I said, I've seen this movie. When I first started out in radio, I was working around the clock those first few years. And that's what set me apart from everybody else. That's why I became an equity partner at 24 years old, and made a substantial amount of money in my early 20s. That's why I built a name for myself and was able to land a VP of sales position for a major company when I was 28. All these different things that I did are the reasons why I achieved very high levels of success. Now, once I achieved those levels, I was able to go on the vacations and, spend more time and have more of that, shift to, take my friends on fun trips. I afforded myself that opportunity, but none of that happened without making the sacrifice initially to get myself to that point.
Got it. So this is a season in your life and you're just recognizing that this is where you are, but you know that that's going to change at some point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because there's always a tipping point in any successful business, right? You can see it coming. I mean, you might not have every specific date, planned out, but I know where things are going. I just got off the phone with my agent and another publishing house today. We have a few different offers on my second book. And, so there's all these different things that I have in the works. And I don't know if it's going to be in 6 months or in 1 year, but I know that tipping point is getting much and much more close to my hands every day that, I take these chances, I do the work and I put forth the effort. So it's actually really exciting to watch it all unfold.
Yeah, I bet. I want to talk a little bit about fulfillment as we slowly start to wrap up here. And some of these questions are going to feel like they're really out of left field, so just roll with it.
Sure.
What do people often get wrong about you?
People might see me and think that I had this easy life and that, I'm so lucky. Oh my gosh, that is so not the case. And it's sort of weirdly what sets me up really well for this coronavirus situation right now. While my heart breaks for everybody going through this terrible time, I feel like I was born for this. I have been through so much freaking adversity in my life. I have friends that are calling me every night crying, how are we going to get through this? I'm like, man up, kid. This is going to be fine. This is just one more challenge in our life. We will overcome this. We will learn from it and we will be better. It doesn't even come into my mind that there's any other option than that.
I love that. What is an unusual or absurd thing that you love?
Eating the rest of my son's dinner, specifically when he has hamburgers and French fries.
I love that. What's one goal that you thought when you achieved it, everything is going to be great, and then you got it and you're like, that didn't do it?
Yeah, I would probably say hitting, the C-suite in corporate America. That was a big goal of mine because a lot of women don't, get that opportunity. And I really thought from a leadership perspective, wow, that's having made it. But it was the same BS. And what's also comical, I want people to know, it's almost easier when you get to that level. You have so much freaking support. You have multiple assistants, multiple teams reporting into you. Truly, it is easier. And that's that trick that I believe I used to tell myself, like, oh, I can't imagine me actually making it there. Now that I made it, and pulled the curtain back and looked behind, that's what I want people to know. It's not that those people are better than you. It's that they have more support and they're propped up to look better, but actually they have it easier.
That's so good. If you could spend 1 month anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
1 month anywhere in the world. I love Hawaii. I haven't been there in years, and I think it's such a beautiful and serene place. That would be a place I'd love to take my son on vacation with a group of people that we love, and I find it really relaxing there.
All right. Weird one. What's one restaurant that you would go to before you die? Where would your last meal be?
Oh my gosh, I'm so not a foodie. That's not something I would ever think about. But I guess if I was saying this is one of the last ones, I would definitely go to a steak restaurant where I could have mashed potatoes, bread, steak, and really eat unhealthy.
That would be Smith & Wollensky for you.
I love Smith & Wollensky. Yes, yeah. I love that place.
I felt that. Walking down Lincoln Road. Okay. So all right, we're going to wrap up with some rapid fire questions. Just answer first thing that comes to mind. What would your friends say is one of your superpowers?
Funny.
What keeps you up at night?
Nothing.
What's the one thing that you want to get better at?
Oh my God, I want to get better at everything.
Is there one in particular that's top of mind that just popped in your head?
Managing my upset, staying calm and even keeled is something that I could get better at.
What one book have you reread the most?
I mean, I just interviewed Mark Manson yesterday, so I was diving into his work a lot in the past couple of weeks to get prepared. So all of those, everything is effed, type of all his books. I really enjoy them.
Yeah, he's great. What's your guilty pleasure other than you kids' French fries and hamburgers?
Yeah, I mean, eating bad is definitely where I've been faulting lately, so I'll own that.
Okay. 2 questions left. If you had to give a TED Talk on nothing that you're known for and nothing that you've been speaking about. But
I just gave my TED Talk.
You did?
Yeah, I gave a TEDx talk October 26th, and it just got promoted to TED last week, and I'm so proud. But go ahead, finish your question.
Oh, that is amazing. Congratulations.
I know, it's crazy. Thank you.
Super proud of you for that. That's incredible.
Thank you.
So if you had to give a TED Talk on nothing that you're known about, nothing that you're known for, nothing that you speak about, it can really be on any subject that you want. What would you do it on?
Oh my gosh. This is not the answer you want, but I was going to say, when you do a TED Talk, right, you want to do something that is memorable, that can break through, that can go viral, right? That's really, that was my goal anyways. So I did a talk I did it about the antithesis of the Me Too movement and challenging the Me Too movement. And I did that because I wanted to get attention. But if I was really looking to do something good, just, out of the right reasons, I would say I would want to more do something around how to be a great salesperson, because I feel like sales is applicable in it doesn't matter if you're in a sales position. You could just be a stay-at-home mom. You're still trying to sell someone on something every day, whether it be your kids or your husband. And I would want to share those strategies and techniques with everybody in the world so they could apply them to their life so they can get more of what they want.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I want to know. Last question. We'll switch it up. What one question would you like to ask me?
Oh my gosh, you ask all these tricky questions out of nowhere. What do you like best about hosting your podcast?
Getting to talk to people like you, honestly, because it's, I am anything that's on the top of my mind. I get an opportunity to ask really interesting people, really interesting questions. By nature, I'm a super curious guy, and I love podcasts. I love questions. I love entrepreneurship, and you put it all together, and here I am. So it's super exciting.
That's so great.
Well, listen, I really enjoyed this. This hour went fast. Do you have any final words, suggestions, or an ask for the people that are listening?
Yeah, we're going through a really challenging time right now, and, just having faith and pulling on your past experiences where you faced adversity before and you overcame it. Spend some time reflecting on that. It will make you feel much stronger today to take this on and lead with a positive attitude.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode and you know someone that needs some help in either stepping up their work hard game or their play hard game, it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with them to help me get this movement out there. So if you like what you heard, head on over to iTunes, take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, and I will be forever grateful. So until the next episode, excuses are over. It's time to live.